Mama. Today I'm going to answer a question that a lot of you have been asking on Instagram. I am going to share my birth story. Now this week I'm going to share the birth story of my son, and next week I'm going to share the birth story of my daughter. They're both induced labors with completely different stories. So I'm excited to share with you the differences between them, what my experiences were, and if you're preparing for an induced labor, I hope these will help you know different things that you might be able to imagine as you try to wrap your head around preparing for your own. If you're in these shoes, also make sure you check out last week's video when we talked about preparing for induced labor and all of my tips and tricks to make it go as smoothly as possible. I'm Katie Huey Harrison, founder and editor-in-chief of Undefining Motherhood. We're an educational site and community equipping you with the information you need to do this mom thing your way. And I'm so excited to share this 37-week labor induction story with you, because when we find out we're being induced, it can be really unnerving. A lot of moms are upset by it, a lot of moms are hurt by it, but I can tell you, having now done it twice, that it can be a wonderful, empowering experience. It can be something that we can feel like we can take a little bit of control over. So if you're here looking for these 37-week labor induction stories, please know that it's going to be okay and that you're not in this alone, and it can be a really amazing journey. And I'm going to tell you about the one that I had that really was one of the better experiences of my life. So if you follow me on Instagram or my website, then you probably already know that I had a pretty rocky fertility journey. We went through 4 pregnancy losses trying to get to our son. And it was a nightmare. And it made me lose so much trust in my body. This is something you'll hear a lot about from lost moms who are willing to open up and talk about their lost journeys and their pregnancy after lost journeys. We really don't have the confidence in our bodies that we used to. And at least in my case, I very much felt like my body was broken. Like it couldn't do this whole carrying and birthing a baby thing. So when I found out I was pregnant with my son, even though I had recently had surgery to repair an issue with my uterus, and I knew that everything should theoretically go more smoothly this time, oh my God, I was terrified. I really was so anxious, and I stayed that way the entire pregnancy. If you're in these shoes, check out our pregnancy after miscarriage videos, as well as my video on my tips to handle anxiety during pregnancy, because I've done a lot of work on it. I promise you are not alone if you're feeling this way. So as I was going through pregnancy with Jack, I really didn't allow myself to imagine actually giving birth and bringing him home. I was scared to imagine birth, not so much because I was afraid of labor itself, but because I just didn't trust that there was still gonna be a living baby with me at that point. And bringing him home, thinking about that was out of the question. So I kind of went through pregnancy pretending that part was never going to happen. It was as if I thought I were going to just be pregnant forever, which obviously can't happen. So it really snuck up on me. In the days leading up to birth with Jack, people kept asking me, are you nervous? Are you anxious? And I was like, I mean, it's labor. Women do this all the time. I felt so confident. And then I was diagnosed with preeclampsia. And all of a sudden, the possibility of labor became so real, so fast. And it floored me. I was terrified. I had taken a birth class, and I knew when I took the birth class that my blood pressure had been a little erratic and there was a possibility that I would need to be induced early. But again, it all just felt so abstract to me. So I had told the teacher at the birth class, hey, I might have to be induced. Can you please talk about induction? But somehow I didn't actually believe it, because I just didn't totally process that I was going to be going through labor and giving birth at all. So she talked about it, thank goodness, and I'm so thankful I did that, because that information was stored both in my physical notes and in my memory bank to help me out when I went into my high-risk specialist office. And I knew at this point that things were not looking good in terms of my preeclampsia diagnosis. But what I didn't yet know was how severe that diagnosis can actually be. So I didn't realize that I was going to walk in to her office on a Wednesday and be told, come in Sunday to have a baby. Even though I had been exhibiting preeclampsia symptoms for weeks, even though I knew that my protein levels in my urine was high, I just didn't understand that this was going to happen. And I cannot tell you how much it floored me, the visceral reaction to this news that, oh my God, not only are you actually having this baby, but you're actually having this baby in 4 days. So she told me she wanted to take my blood pressure and make sure it looked okay. And it was through the roof. And she said, do you feel better now about the fact that we're about to get this baby out of you? And I was like, no, you did this to my blood pressure when you just told me I'm about to have a baby that I thought I had another in my head 4 weeks, because 37 weeks is technically full term, but your due date is at 40 weeks, and he was my first healthy birth. So most first babies come late. That's just what I had in my head. I was stunned. I actually asked the doctor if I could have another day. She said, you need to come in and be induced on Sunday night. And I was like, can we just wait until Monday? Can we give me like one more day to get things organized? I had a shower planned on Saturday, and I was going to be induced the next day, and the shower was at my house. It was a housewarming because we had just renovated. Nothing was in place. Nothing was done. Oh my gosh. It was so intense. But my specialist said, no, I will not give you even one extra day. This baby is coming out. She gave me a steroid injection. I went back the next day for a second steroid injection. And 4 days later, Jack came into the world. So let me tell you about that. And I hope that if you're feeling anxious about labor induction, or if you're having labor induction at 37 weeks, I know there's so much we worry about that early, and I hope I can ease your mind a little bit. Nothing in this video is medical advice, it's just my story. And sometimes I think the most helpful thing we can do is listen to other women's stories and know that our bodies can do the same thing. I thought my body was broken. I really thought it couldn't do this. And it did. It's done it twice. And this experience was a really, truly fantastic one. So here's what I did. My husband and I went to have dinner. So when you're induced, there are a few ways it can happen. What happened for me was that they said, we will call you late afternoon, early evening, and we'll tell you what time to come in. When they called, they said, hey, come sometime in the next few hours. So we said, all right, our bags are packed, we're ready to go. We're gonna go have our favorite dinner while we have a chance, because with a new baby, going out to dinner is hard, and we're gonna go check into the hospital. And this restaurant that I love is a Tex-Mex place. I just wanted cheese dip, and I said, this is really close to the hospital, so let's go here. And then we got there. Oh my gosh, I could not stomach the idea of anything, even just a chip dipped in queso. Nope, not happening. I was so nervous at this point. I just wanted to be at the hospital and get things rolling. But here's what that means, to get things rolling. At least in my case, because I was not at that point in any type of active labor. They wanted to give me a cervical ripening agent, keep me overnight, and then start Pitocin in the morning. So even though I was getting things rolling, really nothing was happening. So I got to the hospital, I got checked into a room, I settled in, I told them a few things that I was really concerned about. One, a common cervical ripening agent that is used is Cytotec, or the generic is misoprostol. This is a medication that is commonly used to induce miscarriage when someone has lost a baby but has not fully miscarried yet. With my loss history, I was so afraid of this medication. It just brought back very upsetting memories for me. So I said, absolutely, am I not willing to have this medicine? So they gave me Cervical, which I'm told, not that kind of doctor, tends to do a little bit less. And that was my experience. The Cervical did absolutely nothing for me. So they inserted the Cervical as a vaginal suppository. So it went directly onto my cervix, and then they gave me something, I don't remember what, to help me sleep. And believe it or not, I went to sleep and I slept through the night until it was time to take my Pitocin in the morning. So I got a good night's sleep, and I cannot tell you, if you are being induced and you are doing this overnight induction, if there's anything that they are willing to give you that you're also comfortable taking to help you sleep, it's really a game changer. Because when my daughter was born, I didn't get that overnight rest, and I cannot emphasize enough the difference in the first day of baby's life that having that rest made. It was so important for me. So if you have the possibility of the option, try to get the rest. I woke up at 7 a.m. They woke me up. They wouldn't let me eat at this point. Many hospitals will now allow you to eat during labor, but mine is not one of them. I think they let me have breakfast. And then they said once we started Pitocin, nothing. So if I remember correctly, my husband went to McDonald's and got us a biscuit because there's one inside the hospital. Seems a little counterintuitive to have McDonald's inside so many hospitals, but is what it is. And then they started my Pitocin drip. So they put me on an IV. The Pitocin started, and it took about an hour for me to start feeling contractions. And at first the contractions were very light. So one thing I had learned in birthing class was that because induced labors tend to stall more frequently, if you move your body, it can really help prevent your labor from stalling. And knowing many people who had had 2-day labor experiences, I was so scared that being induced that early, first birth, I was convinced this wasn't going to go well. So I really wanted to move. So I insisted on wireless monitors. That was one of the first things I told the nurse when I got to the hospital. I need wireless monitors. And she was like, you're in bed right now. Like, you're just going to go to sleep. And I was like, fine, I need to know they're here in the morning. Don't you dare tell me that you are out of wireless monitors. So she brought those in first thing in the morning with the Pitocin drip, and she said, once you want to get up and move, let me know. And I was like, I want to get up and move. I'm anxious. I'm antsy. So I brought a birthing ball, and I put that birthing ball up on top of a little counter in the hospital room. And every time I had a contraction, I would just dance with the birthing ball. And I would lean over to dance, and that kind of stretched out my low back, which felt really good to me during labor. And then I had this little plastic massage tool, a very basic massage tool. I'll link it in the description below, that my husband used to just rub my back while I was contracting. And this is what we did for hours. They would come in, they did a couple of cervical checks. I wasn't progressing as much as I wanted to, but I was progressing okay, and it actually turned out really well. But I just made sure that during contractions, I was up and I was moving and I was using gravity to help me, and I was dancing with this birthing ball. I was walking around the room. I had planned to do things like go on walks in the hallway and take a bath in the bathtub that is available at my hospital. I didn't do any of those things. I personally was so comfortable just dancing with the birthing ball. And for me, this time that I was in labor and dancing with this ball and spending time with my husband, and contractions are getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and I'm still just working my way through them, it was not only incredibly empowering for me and my body, it also was a really special time for me and my husband. I loved that time we had together in our hospital room. I remember being able to just see how in awe he was of what my body was doing. And for so long, I felt like my body was broken, and I had felt like my body was failing him. And finally, through this process, I got so much healing because I felt like my body was working and I was showing him that it could work. And I really hesitate to even say that because I don't want to make anyone feel like if labor is not a good experience for you, your body's not working. And actually, my second labor was not as good an experience, which I'll tell you about next week. Your body is doing what it needs to do, just trying to get your baby out safely. And whatever happens, that's not a reflection of you or your abilities or anything that you should feel about yourself or your worth or your body. But also, while I don't want to make anyone feel bad if, their body doesn't labor well, I also want to tell you my story. And the truth is that this particular experience was extremely healing for me. Having this time with my husband, just working through contractions and realizing when I can do this, and not just I can do this like I can make this baby come out, but I can do this like I can work through this pain. I can manage through what's happening right now. And this is also not a knock against epidurals because I'm about to get one. I never planned to have an unmedicated birth. That was never in the cards for me. I do not like pain. I do not have a high pain tolerance. And I did not want to do that. What I also didn't want was for my labor to stall. So what I had decided was that I was going to labor as long as I possibly could. My goal was 5 centimeters. And then I was going to ask for an epidural. I'm not gonna lie, 5 centimeters did not come as quickly as I was hoping it would, but it did come after about 6 hours on the Pitocin trip. Getting to that point, I would say that the contraction pain started to be pretty rough around 2 to 3 centimeters. Supposedly, Pitocin-induced contractions are worse to deal with. They're harder and they hurt more. I don't really have a great comparison point to say for sure, but I will say they hurt, and I was not happy. But another thing that I had learned in birthing class and that I had talked to the nurse about was that there were narcotic options available for pain management. I wish I'd understood a little more about them, but I'm also thankful that I knew about them. So this was something I had decided that I was okay with if my doctor was okay with it, which she was. So what this meant is that they administered fentanyl to me, and they did it in 3 doses. And the nurse told me that it would become less efficacious every dose. And I didn't quite take that to heart the way that I wish I had. So if you're hearing this and you're considering that as an option to hold off longer on an epidural, please hear me. It works less with every dose. So I got 1 dose an hour for 3 hours. Every time I got a dose, I had to sit down, so I had to stop moving, get in bed, let them administer it, and sit for at least 15 minutes after. And if I was feeling at all dizzy or out of sorts, then I had to wait until I was not feeling that. So the nurse did say, there's a chance you're not going to get up and move on the fentanyl, but there's also a chance that you are. And with an epidural, there's 0 chance. So I said, let's start with the fentanyl. So the first dose made me very dizzy, a little bit nauseous. I didn't get sick, but I was super, super, super nauseous for about 10 minutes. But about 15 minutes in, I started to feel physically better, and the pain was extremely numbed. I was so impressed with this drug that I knew nothing about. Now I know it's actually a pretty scary narcotic outside of a hospital setting. But at the time, I just knew, wow, this is really helping my labor pain. And so the mistake that I made was that I waited until the 3rd dose had been administered plus about half an hour to request the epidural. If I could go back and do it again, I would say, when you start this 3rd dose of fentanyl, get the anesthesiologist on call to be down here for the epidural, because the 3rd dose was not nearly as effective. And when I say not nearly as effective, I mean it did nothing. So this first dose was like, holy cow, I feel so much better. I've got to sit because I feel nauseous and lightheaded and dizzy, but that's fine. That went away after 10 to 15 minutes, and I was up and moving, was ready for the 2nd dose by the time it was administered. It helped some, but not nearly to the level that the first one had. By the time that 3rd dose rolled around, I desperately wanted that 3rd dose, and it did nothing. Nothing. And then when I finally requested the epidural, it took a while for the anesthesiologist to get there, and I was miserable. So if you want an epidural, I do suggest to don't wait until the very last minute. When you start thinking about it, maybe go ahead and mention it. Now, I did mention this in my 2nd labor, that it took so long, and they said it shouldn't have taken that long. It will be faster. And it was. But that's a whole different story that also doesn't go well. We'll get there next week. So I got the epidural. So at this point, I'm lying in bed. They can give my wireless monitors to another patient who wants to move around. They're putting me on regular monitors. The epidural was not working in one spot on the right side of my belly. They came, they moved something in the epidural, they changed my position, and after probably 30 extra minutes, that kind of hot spot went away. I wish that I had talked to my doctor about that after my first labor, because with my daughter, as you'll hear next week, the same thing happened and we couldn't fix it, and it was actually much worse this time. So I tell you this simply to say, if this has happened to you in the past, if you've had this kind of hot spot with an epidural, please talk to your doctor about the chances of it happening again. I don't know anything about the chances. I don't know anything about the risks. I just know that I wish I had known it could happen again and it could be much worse. I would have made different decisions for my labor with my daughter had I in any way been able to envision how that epidural was going to go. And I'll tell you about that next week. Now I'll finish Jack's story. The epidural finally started to work. I'm laid up in bed. I took a nap, which was great. We watched a little bit of TV. And then I started to feel a real pressure. I felt like something was trying to crack through my pelvic bone. I had what I'm told is a very good epidural because I could move my legs on my own. But I couldn't feel any pain, but I could feel lots of pressure. I called the nurse and I said, hey, I'm feeling this pressure. How do I know when I'm ready to push? And at this point, she didn't check me. She didn't check my cervix because my water had broken. They had manually broken my water right before the epidural. So they don't want to check once your water has broken any more than they absolutely have to, because they don't want to introduce bacteria into you, which I appreciate, because I think I did get bacteria and I did actually end up a little while later with a double kidney infection, which I don't recommend. I think that was probably from the catheter, but who knows. So when you get an epidural, you also get a catheter because you can't control bowel movements the same way. Not bowel movements, what am I saying? You can't control urine. That's what a catheter is for, urine. You can't control urine flow, and you can't get up to go to the bathroom. So the catheter is placed with the epidural. So I was able to lie comfortably with that, take a nap. I called the nurse about the pressure that I was feeling, and she said, you notice how you feel it coming? There's a lot of pressure, and then that pressure goes away. And I was like, yeah, I see that. And she said, that's a contraction. You're feeling the pressure during the contraction. Baby's head is pushing down, and then it lets up. That's the baby pushing into the birth canal, coming back out of the birth canal. This is something I had learned in labor classes, priming your body for actually pushing baby out for that transition phase. So she said, wait until you don't feel that letting up anymore, and then tell me, and you're going to be ready to push. As I sometimes do, I took that message a little too much to heart. So don't take it quite as far as I did. I waited so long. It wasn't just that I wasn't feeling the reprieve. I was feeling next to no reprieve. But because my pain is the wrong word. It was pressure. But when you feel like your pelvis is about to shatter, pressure is just as intense, if not more so, than pain. And I felt like my pelvis was going to shatter. But if that was a level 10 out of 10, which it was, then I would ease up to maybe an 8 out of 10. And so I kept saying, I'm still easing up, so I can't call the nurse yet. And finally, husband called the nurse for me. And thank God he did. She came in and she checked me and she said, don't push, because I am not supposed to catch this baby, and it's here. So I didn't push, and I continued to feel like my pelvis was going to shatter. And this was hands down the most miserable part of labor. Far more miserable than pushing was waiting to be able to push. Waiting for the doctor to arrive. She finally arrived after 40 very long minutes. This is not typical, but If your doctor is coming from a different building, I suggest you ask about that ahead of time, just so you have a little lead time on the pushing thing. It's also possible that they're going to attend to another patient. There might be an emergency C-section. On the whole, they're going to arrive faster than this. And when the doctor came, I pushed 3 times. And actually the first 2, I didn't even push correctly. So they say that when you're having a baby, you should push like you're trying to have the biggest bowel movement of your life. I did not remember that. I did learn it in labor class, but I didn't remember it. And the nurse told me, and I also just wasn't totally paying attention. So the first 2 pushes, it was like trying to push out urine. Like I was pushing from the front, and you really want to be pushing from the back and really pushing from all around. It's like a 360-degree push. So I did 2 of the pushes from the front, and the nurse was like, I can't believe this baby isn't here. Are you pushing like you're trying to have the biggest bowel movement of your life? And I was like, no, that's a completely different push. And so that's what I did with my next contraction, and Jack was here. I believe if I had been pushing that way all along, he probably would have come on push number 1. He was so ready, and I was miserable from the pressure. He was born. And you know what? I don't want to tell you that it was this glowing, amazing moment, because that's what we always hear. But the truth is, it was very surreal to me. I didn't cry. I didn't instantly feel that incredible bond. I didn't really understand what was happening. I think when you go through pregnancy not believing that baby is going to come, when baby does come, there are a number of possible different emotional reactions. And mine, honestly, I think was shock. I truly didn't believe that this baby was going to be here. Even when we had dinner where I didn't eat the night before in the hospital, I kept saying to my husband, if we get to bring him home, what about this? If we get to bring him home, I want to do that. If we get to do newborn photos, I want a picture in this place. I really didn't believe he was coming. So when he was finally here, honestly, it took me a long time to even wrap my brain around it. He was taken away from us pretty quickly to transitional care, which is like, it's not the NICU. They're not, babies in transitional care are not in intensive care. They're not considered critical. His blood sugar was low. And so he was taken to transitional care. He was given a bottle. We didn't have that like skin time or that attempt to breastfeed. I don't personally think that's why I didn't have that instant connection or that overwhelming feeling. They did get to put him on my chest for a minute. I think I was just in shock. I hadn't prepared myself mentally that this would be a real thing, and it was. And it actually took me until the next morning to even fully process that he was here and he was real. It was nighttime when he was born, so I was induced. My Pitocin drip started at 7 a.m. and he was born at 6:50 p.m. So it was an 11-hour and 50-minute labor. It made me feel so strong. It made me feel like I had overcome so much. The labor itself, I had such positive feelings toward, and such healing feelings toward. Postpartum experience was a lot harder for me, and I'll talk to you about that another day. I hope it's been helpful for you to hear this story. It's been really healing and helpful for me to get to tell it. If you have questions about my 37-week induced labor, please drop them in the comments below. I know this can be scary. I'm here to support you. I want to help you through whatever you're going through. Don't forget to like this video, comment, let me know your thoughts about your induced labor experience, what you want to hear more of, and click the subscribe button so you can be notified next week when I tell my daughter's birth story, because believe me, it is a completely different story.